welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I should start off by just explaining to you I'm just some silly American that moved to Germany a long time ago, did a lot of stuff. I babble about that all here on my channel. Thanks for joining us. Today's tale is a weird way for us to begin our relationship, but if it speaks to you, consider checking out the other videos on my channel and clicking like, subscribing, join us. You returning viewers, subscribers, and oh my beloved members, welcome back. I've missed you. I hope you're doing good and have been taking care of yourself. Well, if you folks have watched my other videos and have been paying attention, well, you're aware of things like I like to talk to strangers. I love to travel. I love music and was lucky enough to work around people involved in the music industry. And for sure you've heard me remark from time to time that I have enjoyed the German beer. And today's tale has a little bit of all of that. I was a little hesitant at my idea of sharing this story because it's definitely not my finest moment and it leaves me open for judgment from some people. But every time I think of this story, it makes me giggle. It's just kind of an epic tale. It was an epic day. Too good not to share. The good news is, irresponsible behavior or not, in the end, I was okay. And while the events that occurred are somewhat crazy, as the years went by, like if my memory serves me correct, this took place in the early 2000s. After all this time went by, a lot has happened between then and now, friendships were formed after paths were crossed. And quite honestly, things are, for me, kind of awkward and embarrassing at this moment for me to admit to them that I was a stowaway on their tour bus. Just watch to the end and you'll understand the grasp of the awkwardness and why I have to leave some people anonymous as I tell this tale. I certainly don't want to get anybody in trouble. This is a story about the time I was a stowaway on a tour bus and woke up in another city. Let's get into it. If you've been watching my videos, you know that I did some time working as a roadie. And if you do that job, it's quite normal to make connections. Bonds are formed. And even though we all go our separate ways at the end of the tour, it's not uncommon that your friends that you made traveling around and working with for a few weeks get in touch with you, make contact when they are once again in your area. And so one summer day, as I was living in Franken, I got a message that a tour bus driver friend of mine was coming through my area. He informed me he was driving for a New York City hardcore band and that he would be at a festival. German viewers, I always feel the need to clarify, this is not the genre of music you have here in Germany that you call hardcore, that from what I can tell is electronics and speaks mostly to the meth heads of your country. The genre I'm speaking of is something different. I'll put a link in the description. I thought, how cool. I get to be reunited with a friend. Coincidentally, he's driving around a band that I was a fan for since my teen years. And we were going to meet up at a festival full of other bands of music I liked. This sounded like a good time. So he tells me this festival's taking place in Bamberg, and I quickly get online and I try to figure out where it is, and it's in a weird location. But Bamberg nonetheless, I was familiar with, had gone to a lot, love, adored, very cute old German town. From what I saw online, it didn't look so complicated. It just looked like a weird corner of Bamberg I had never been to and would simply consist of me taking the train and taking a bus. It looked like it was less than a half-hour drive from where I lived. So if you've never been there and you ever get the chance to go and visit Bamberg, Germany, do it. And if you're a beer drinker and you want to try something a little bit different, I recommend find a place called Schenkele. I'll put links in the description below. And if you find Schenkele, see if you can get a spot in their little beer garden. And you make sure that you order yourself at least one Schenkele Rauchbier. But I will warn you, that beer is a meal in of itself and will fill you up. I will also warn you that if you are a vegetarian, you're probably not going to like this beer. It's like a dark beer that tastes like smoked ham has been soaking in it. So, because of the festival's weird location and me being unsure with taking buses and the corner of where it was supposed to be, I decided to make a day out of it. I love Bamberg. I'd been there a lot, as I already said. And for me, it's like there's a lot of eye candy, a lot of old historic buildings, things you can just spend hours looking at. A lot of history. I made a plan and I took the train out there, no problems. When I arrived at the train station, I looked for the location where I was supposed to be able to find the specific bus to take me to the weird festival location. Found it, made a note of the schedule, and I headed into the town of Bamberg. I knew exactly where I wanted to go, to that Schenkel beer garden, and I wanted to get myself a delicious Bavarian meal with braten and at least one or two of those Schenkel Rauch beers. I was gonna get a good meal into me before I went to this hardcore festival. So luckily enough, it was a gorgeous summer day, the sun was shining, and I did some wandering throughout the city, looking at beautiful buildings. And eventually I found my way to that little beer garden. Got a little seat by myself in the beer garden, ordered myself a braten, semmelknödel, and a nice big Rauch beer. I sat on the table in front of me, the map of the town Bamberg. I was just, something to look at while I was eating my meal. I'm sitting by myself. I had hours to waste and I was just enjoying this European way of life, sitting outside, having a beer, cigarette, a good meal, and I'm in no hurry. But I remember at some point, the table next to me was filled with about 5 or 6 middle-aged to older Bavarian men. And I think because I was sitting there looking at a map of the town, one of them, just directly yelled over to my table, "Wo müssen Sie hin? Brauchen Sie Hilfe?" And I responded to them in German, "Oh, no, thank you, that's very nice. I'm just, looking at the map. I've been here before. I think I know where I'm going, but thanks." These guys were friendly enough, so then began the typical questions, "Wo kommen Sie hier?" And long story short, my faithful viewers, somehow I ended up on that table. Not literally on the table, like dancing or anything. Not yet. No, I found myself sitting with 5 to 6 Bavarian men, chatting, laughing, learning about each other's culture. And the funny thing was, there was something magical about that beer krug. When I went to that beer garden, I had hours to go before I had to go find that bus, and I thought to myself, 1 or 2 max. It's kind of a strong beer, but I had a pretty high tolerance back in the day. But yeah, this magical thing just kept happening that every time I would finish my beer, it was refilled before I even realized the mug was taken away and replaced with a new one. Those guys were great. So I spent a few hours drinking with a bunch of Bavarian men, dark beer that tastes like ham's been soaked in it for a few hours. When before I know it, I realize what time it is, and I need to get moving my butt and make my way to the bus stop. And I remember realizing that, having to say goodbye, and then pointing out what a shame I can't leave a little bit of beer there, so trying to chug it, which resulted in some of this dark, beautiful brown beer drooling down onto the white tank top I was wearing. But like a trucker who always makes it to her destination, I headed off that bus stop. I found that bus stop, and whew, I was feeling good, but I was a little bit worried. Just a little bit worried that I would find this hardcore festival out in the weird farmlands of Bamberg. But you know what's a good distraction from your own worries? Trying to help someone with their worries. And that was when I noticed 2 young girls with backpacks and such waiting at this bus stop for the same bus as me. I could see by the shirt they were wearing and patches on their jacket that they were about the same bands that I was about. So I walked over to them and asked them if they were going to the festival. I approached them and asked them in German, and what I got back then was asking if I spoke English, and they looked a little nervous. So I responded, "I do," and they told me they were from Sweden. And they were more nervous than I was about the ability of finding this strange location of this music festival. And you see, I have traveled a lot in Germany, but also at this point of the story, I had very big beer muscles. And I told my newly found Swedish friends that no worries, I will get us to this festival. For I've been here before, and I speak German. In my delusions of grandeur, I felt like a superhero, and you could say my insignia on the front of my uniform was a brown smoked beer stain. We got on that bus, it dropped us off at some farm, and then we had to follow some signs, so there were tricky moments on this safari, but I got us there. Soon enough, I saw the tour buses before I saw the club, and I knew they're right there. So I told my Swedish sweethearts that this is where we depart. I have to go find my friend who's driving one of them buses, but I'll see you on the inside. I'll see you in the pit. We hugged, and I made my way towards the buses, and my buddy was waiting outside. Big hugs and just a lot of giggles, because I couldn't hide the fact that I was kind of already like a little bit drunk. And again, the giant beer stain on my white tank top. My buddy told me he was having a great tour, that the band and the crew he was driving around were treating him great, and that he was able to put me on the list for the show. And before I knew it, I ended up with, of course, a beer in my hand that also kept magically refilling itself. German beer is magical. Well, the lineup to this festival really spoke to me. There were a couple bands there that I really enjoyed, so I was excited about that. Catching up with my tour bus driver friend was cool. We had been on some funny adventures together with a funny band. But also really cool for me was he was able to like introduce me to one of the dudes from that band that I was a fan of. Little teenage punk rock Armstrong was a fan. So that was really cool to meet him, but even cooler, that dude seemed to be a nice down-to-earth dude. So at some point, it's time, I'm ready, I want to make my way in there. I got to see some of this music live, I need to feel that music live, and I wanted to get into that pit. With my magically refilling beer in hand, we made our way in there, and my tour bus driver friend wasn't much for pits, so he kind of like stood on the outside, and I asked him to hold my beer because I spotted my Swedish girls right up against the front of the stage, and the band that I really loved was about to begin. Hand the beer off, make my way through the crowd. I'm older than the majority of them, but whatever, I know this territory well. And I make my way to my crew, my Swedish girls. And I remember the three of us were like all right up on the barrier, right up against the stage. Good view, but also not really in hitting, kicking area of the pit. But of course, as is normal when you're in that kind of a concert situation, the pit went batshit crazy, and I do love watching it, and I will jump in from time to time. But if you're into that style music and you're into that scene and you've been in that situation, you know that there's always that one asshat. That one guy that is not in there moshing. That guy goes to concerts like this to jump in the pit to try to hit as many people as he can on purpose. Trust me, I've got more than a few stories. I'm sure I'll share them coming soon on my channel. But I'm one for putting those douche canoes in their place. The ones that you see are clearly trying to hit random people for no freaking reason and calling it moshing. So this little skinhead looking dude, all I know is he comes crashing into one of the chicks. And you know, when you're in a pit, you watch out. It's normal that someone comes flying and you grab them. Hopefully you catch them from hitting the ground. We have etiquette, and you put them right back into the crowd. And so, you know, one or two times that can happen. But this dude, like I started watching, he hit not just us, but a few others so many times. Realize we're looking at a stage, he's coming from behind. So I start watching him instead of this band I wanted to see. And I'm clearly seeing all this dude is doing is he's running back there, he's doing a little bit of this, but then he's aiming for somebody that's right up the front against the stage, and he's just trying to hit them, just running right into them. So, he had already hit my Swedish girls. I was not going to let that happen again as safari leader. And I gave them a look like, I'll get this handled, just wait a minute. And the next time little skinhead dude came flying our way, I grabbed him by his shoulders, put all of my weight behind it, and drove him as far in that direction as I could, and then let him go, kind of like threw him. And then as you do in the pit, you turn back around and you watch the hardcore show. And the next thing I recall, and I want to be clear, this is where it all starts to get fuzzy, okay? The next thing I recall is literally feeling a tap, tap, tap on my shoulder. I turn around and there is standing little skinhead guy I just threw across the room. I don't know what he was trying to say to me because there was a concert going on and I'm right at an amplifier. But sometimes actions and body language, They speak louder than words. All I know is he was smiling, he was laughing, and I was getting a lot of pats on my shoulder, and before I know it, he hugged me, and then before I know it, that hug turned into he threw me over his shoulder, and I remember spinning. And I remember spinning and making eye contact with my tour bus driver and just saying, "Wee!" and give me my beer. I think it's hilarious that my last clear memory of that night is really being on that guy's shoulder, spinning, having a beer in my hand, and I don't know why we were new best friends, but we loved each other because I threw him across the room. Last clear memory of the night. The next thing I know, I wake up and I don't know where the hell I am, but it's moving a little bit. And I think I hear an engine. It smells like motor oil. And if you ever drank too much, maybe you know how it is. You start to try to pace together the ends of the night. I was in Bamberg. Oh, my head, too much beer. And so I put on my phone and I started to try to investigate my surroundings. And that was when I figured out I'm in a tour bus. I'm pretty sure. I hear the engine. Oh boy. But where? What part? Where the hell have I been stowed away at? So I knew I was in a tour bus. I knew, okay, I'm safe. This is a good thing. But I didn't know what part of the tour bus. I hoped and assumed it was the one that my friend was driving. And so I got on my phone and I began texting a musician friend. He had known I was going to meet up with our tour bus friend this night. And so here I am at 5 or 6 in the morning, texting him, and I'm like, just woke up. It's dark. Smells like bus driver. Not sure where I am. Send. And we texted back and forth a little bit about my predicament, theories as to where I may be. Oh God, what I may have done. But eventually, the bus stopped. And so a sort of hatch door above me opens up and I'm blinded by the daylight and my hangover as my tour bus driver friend appears in front of me, puts a hand in and quietly says, "Come." And he releases me from this hidden sleeping space that is under the stairs. You know tour buses, 2 levels. Usually they have a downstairs lounge and the upstairs where the beds are. Well, sometimes under those steps that go to the upstairs lounge, there's a little sleeping or storage space for the bus driver. And that's the hole I got shoved in. And I'll tell you, what a morning. Climbing out of that hole, being quiet, seeing the sun shining, trying to immediately register where I am. I began in Bamberg, quickly realizing I am now on the Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof. My friend reveals to me that the band, their management, they didn't know that he smuggled me in there. So we couldn't talk long because clearly he had a job to do. He had to continue on to the next venue. And he decided the best location on his way where he had to drive was this main train station for me to then find my way home. And I tried to get out of him really, what happened? I said, last thing I remember was spinning around with my new skinhead friend. He just laughed and was like, "Oh yeah, you two are like this." I guess he says as the concert got to the end and it was time for everybody to get go, we hung out talking, and I guess I had explained to him how it was kind of complicated getting there and the nervousness with the bus, and I wasn't even sure if at this hour there was a bus leaving this farm location to go back to the center of town and train home time, not sure. But apparently in my drunkenness, I had declared at the end of the evening as he was about to drive off, "Yes, I'm drunk, but don't worry. I've traveled around Germany a lot. I speak German. I can get myself home. I'll be fine." I, of course, don't remember any of those declarations. But apparently I kept declaring over and over that I could find my way back to my little German village from this farm in the middle of nowhere, Bamberg, at, 3 in the morning. There's a little bit of alcohol in my system. Oh yeah, and don't forget that big brown beer stain on the front of my shirt. I think, luckily enough, my friend made a call, and he just grabbed me and shoved me into the understair sleepy hole. I'm sure I passed right out and slept like a baby. Besides my blood alcohol level, I always slept like a baby on tour buses. That little constant, rocking, it's really nice. And so I thanked him for not letting me die out in Bavarian farm country, and I made my way to the train station with my horrible hangover and smelling like a Brower eye. I waited on the next train to take me back home, and I scanned my brain the whole way trying to find the lost memories that escaped through all those magical reappearing beers. And I remember giggling to myself, I just really was a stowaway on the tour bus of this band I've been a fan of since I was a teenager. And they have no idea. My life is so freaking weird. But in my life, when things get weird, things getting awkward are not far behind. It took a few years, but things did indeed get just slightly awkward. You see, that band, they could never know. They could never know that my tour bus friends stowed me away in their hidey hole on their tour bus. I mean, professionally speaking, how would that look? And so this was a story I just kept to myself. Maybe I shared it with a few close friends. But what the hell do you think the chances are that I ended up not just meeting a few of those band members, but also befriending them? Yeah, coincidentally, that's exactly what happened. Coincidentally, a few years later, I'm touring around with another hardcore band, and we end up at festivals, and that same band ends up being there. Of course, in my head the whole time is, I slept on your tour bus and you had no idea. But of course, in working situations like that, you end up backstage, maybe having meals together, maybe having beers together, and conversations occur, and connections are made, and I find out that they're actually really nice guys. Do I mention that I was stowed away on their bus? Nope. I'm thinking, what are the chances? I'll never run into them again. But yeah, what are the chances? What are the chances that just a few years after that, one of my musician friends gets in touch with me because he's coming back to Germany, because he's in a new band. And guess what? Some of its members are also from that same band. And so, yeah, what are the chances that once again I meet them and yeah, they're really nice guys and even friendships blossom, but do I open my mouth and confess my discretions? Honestly, the dudes I met, I think they would have found it funny, but now I've had so many interactions with them that if I bring this up now, it's incredibly awkward. I look incredibly awkward because I am. I may be awkward, but I'll tell you what, when I'm old and I'm sitting in that old folks' home, I've got some stories to tell. Because that day was several epic adventures, but it all took place on one day. I started in a small village in Franken, took a 20-minute train ride to Bamberg, ended up on some farmland in the middle of nowhere, Bamberg. Woke up at the Frankfurt train station. Alcohol is a hell of a drug. I do thank you all for listening and not judging me. The good news is I survived. I came out fine, except for a little bit of awkwardness amongst friends. And I no longer drink anywhere near how I used to. If you want to support this channel and get access to members-only videos and live chats, click the join button and join us. You'll be in the company of some very good souls. I love you, my beloved members. I do hope to be coming at you again very soon with a new video, but until that happens, I do hope that you are out there taking care of yourself.